Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
Hey, everybody. I'm here with Caleb Turner. Haven't seen Caleb in a while. Caleb, I think it was, I don't remember when I was at the church the first time is when I met you, and I don't remember. Is it an event?
Yeah, I think maybe it was our Oh So Bright, our Christmas tree lighting maybe, or our birthday service. I can't remember. I know it was somewhere around there.
Yeah, it was one of them. Which one was the one where they shot the streamers into the air and it ended up in the big fan?
Yeah, that would have been our birthday service. Yep.
That's the one I thought to myself, they didn't think that one through yet.
Nope. Sure didn't.
Which are some of the most exciting times sometimes.
Absolutely.
And I think, is that stuff still on Facebook where people can go back and see it if they wanted to?
Yep, absolutely.
Tell people how they can go see Factory Church worship services and those things.
Yeah, so our services, the full services are on Facebook, on our Facebook page, which is just Factory Church. And then we also have we post all the messages from Sundays in our app. We have a app in the App Store, Google Play, all that stuff as well.
And on Sunday mornings, you have something to do with that as well, right?
I do, yeah. So I wear a couple different hats at Factory. I'm also the production director, so I'm upstairs every Sunday directing the service, cutting cameras, all that stuff. Usually at Factory between 6:15, 6:30 in the morning for rehearsal and run through of the service, and then on Sunday nights that we have youth, I'll usually be there till 9:30. So Sundays are definitely a long day, but I love it.
Yeah, they are. I know Ryan when he started playing. Ryan, now, for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, it's my son. And Factory Church was a place he had talked about before he went there for quite a while. And Caleb, to give you a little background, if you don't know this, Ryan is a pastor's son. That's who I am. I was a youth pastor. The good thing was I was a youth pastor all those years. Yeah. And so he got the fun end of a lot of that, but he still got the sting of being a pastor's son and being in the limelight and people knowing me. Therefore, they knew him and his brother and sister. And so you got good and bad with those things. He was in search of a church for quite a while, especially during the COVID time. Everybody was kind of out of church. And if you were in between churches, you were still trying to figure out what you're going to do when the walls came down and we all got to go back into the public eye. And so Factory was on his radar. He ended up with you guys. Then you Pastor found out he was a musician, or his friend actually did. There's two Andys, right?
There is two Andys. One of the Andys does play guitar on our worship team.
He's the left-handed guitar player.
Yes, yeah. And then our other Andy he's Pastor Andy, the head pastor.
The pastor. Okay. Who's the piano player? I forget his name.
Jacob.
Jacob. There you go. Jacob. I get all the names confused sometimes.
Yeah.
But I did remember the Andy because he was the one who introduced Ryan or brought him in to start playing some, and they had known each other before. But listen, here you are. You're wearing several hats, and my whole focus is student ministry. First of all, give me a little bit of your life story, your background, before we go into any more of the Factory Church or student ministry. How did life, you and your family, how did all that come about? When did you come to know Jesus, that whole thing? Can you give us a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Northwest Ohio in a little town called Perrysburg, Ohio. I've got 9 siblings. I've got 4 brothers and 5 sisters.
Wow.
8 of us are adopted, including myself. My parents, they really just had a heart for kids in need, and myself being one of them. My birth mother, she while she was pregnant with me, she abused alcohol and drugs while she was pregnant with me, and that led to some problems during birth, and my first few years on Earth were that my mom tells me were pretty challenging. I really am very blessed and thankful to be honestly just here on this earth right now and in the position I am. And most of my brothers and sisters that are adopted face the same issue of birth parents abusing either drugs or alcohol while they were pregnant. Come from a really big family. We moved to North Carolina back in 2014, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, obviously, for the weather. The winters in Ohio were obviously terrible. You got about 5 or 6 months of winter time there.
Oh, yeah.
We also just moved down here for just more opportunity. I met Pastor Andy while we were at our previous church before we started Factory. That's where we went to church. I also went to high school there as well. I met Pastor Andy while I was there. He started leading a high school boys Sunday school class.
Oh, wow.
I really wasn't plugged into the Sunday school classes or anything. I was on the tech team while I was there, and didn't really have much of an interest in going to Sunday school. But someone told me, they really encouraged me to go to Sunday school class and check out. We've got a new teacher for Sunday school and whatnot. I went, checked it out, and went to the Sunday school class. And Pastor Andy had some really good things to say, I remember. And I was like, I'd really like to get to know him more. So I asked him, I think after church one Sunday, if we could, go out to dinner and whatnot, and formed a relationship there with him. And then one Sunday, during one of our Sunday school classes, he told us, all of us high school boys, if we ever wanted to go down to the altar and pray together as a group, that he'd love to do that with us. And so I was the first one that grabbed him and wanted to do that, and kind of started a movement there with that. Pastor Andy ended up speaking at an event that my school put on. It was called a Spiritual Emphasis Week, and there was 2 days that he spoke at that event. The senior pastor at the time heard Pastor Andy speak and was like, "You need to be doing this every Sunday," and kind of told him to follow that calling on his life. That's how Factory was kind of started, was birthed inside of there. I had only been on the tech side of things for 6 years as part of Factory. September of 2022, I kind of started looking at the idea of doing something different, maybe getting out of the church world and just doing something different. So I was pretty actively pursuing becoming a firefighter. So I was training really hard for months and months leading up to the physical test for becoming a firefighter. During that, found out that our current youth pastor was getting ready to transition out. Since I was on the broadcast and production side of things, we did this whole video series with our old youth pastor, and just showing like the vision and the mission behind Factory Youth and whatnot. And it was a really big video series that we were putting out to try and find our next youth pastor. I was the one editing all those videos, took hours upon hours editing those videos and whatnot. I want to say late September 22, Pastor Andy brought me in for a meeting and told me about a vision and a dream that he had. Said that he saw me as the next youth leader at Factory. And when he first said that to me, I was like, well, this is a little bit out of left field. I've always just been the guy behind the scenes, behind cameras, upstairs doing things where no one sees what I'm doing. I've never really been one to talk to people, never really been one to go out of my way to create relationships and things like that. But when he said that to me, it was weird. I'll say I didn't really know how to feel in that moment exactly. But he told me that he sees a calling on my life for doing this. I didn't say yes right away when he asked me to do it. I told him, let me pray and think about it. I didn't tell him either right away that I had been training to do the whole firefighter thing, I was kind of battling with these two options that I've got in front of me now. I remember there were a couple things that happened. I think kind of showed me that this is what I was supposed to be doing, stepping into this calling that God has on my life. I was training and training for months for this firefighter thing, and then I went to do the physical test, and I just missed passing the physical test by about 5 or 10 seconds, and then I also ended up injuring my wrist pretty badly during that physical test as well. I kind of prayed and asked God, was like, is this what you're showing me to not continue going down this path of firefighting and step into this other thing that you've got for me? Ever since then, I've kind of just been really just fully relying on God and following the path that He has for me with leading this youth group. And obviously it has its ups and downs, but overall I've just loved being able to love on these kids and show them the love of Christ and just be a support system for these kids.
And that's a big part of it. Students see sincerity.
Yes, absolutely.
And when people actually love them and are sincere with them, they respond. Now, number one, you're pretty young though too. How old are you?
So I am 23 years old. 23.
And when did you start? You started 2 years ago?
Yep. Yeah, 2 years ago.
So you were 21 when you started. Very young, not too much out of high school that students didn't see you almost as a high schooler.
Yeah.
But you carried some authority. Authority is a big deal, and you took it seriously. And so here we are in student ministry. You're going for one career, and this is not unusual for God. I think if you look at Paul's life, he was headed one way. God stepped in, was on his way to one place, and stepped in and spoke to him and made him blind so he had to depend on God. So you got that. You've got other people in life that were headed in one direction, and God brought them back to do something else. There are other pastors throughout the United States and youth workers and music people I've heard several times where people would go to even seminary, and one would be headed to be a speaking pastor, and God would lead him into music, and another guy was working on music in seminary, and God would lead him to be a speaker. So God has a way of turning things around.
Absolutely.
That's what happened to me. I was headed, thought I was going to Orlando to do music, and I was out of college, and that was my whole career since I was 9 years old, that I wanted to be a musician. I was singing publicly and doing that sort of thing, and God used that to get me where He wanted me to be in student ministry, which I ended up being in for 35 years full-time and still am in through the podcast. So you're not unusual in what's happening there. God has a real way of taking us where He wants us to go while letting us do what we think we want to do.
Absolutely.
So tell me, with all this happening, though, how many times have you wanted to just kind of throw in the towel and go, maybe not. Maybe I've done enough student ministry. Maybe I just need to get out.
Yeah.
You ever had that feeling at all?
Yeah, a couple times.
And tell me where all that came from. Give me some stories behind that.
The most recent one probably would be the old youth pastor. He started doing these events around Halloween time. We'd call it the Factory Youth Spooktacular, and there was decent turnout at those events. And I figured I'd be able to pick that up and have a decent attendance at that as well. So I spent a lot of time promoting, had some advertisements made and stuff, some like flyers and whatnot, was handing flyers out and stuff like that. I was pushing really hard. I was, advertising, we're going to have free food, costume contest, all these fun things. I was really hoping to get at least 50 kids. 50 kids would have been like a really low, goal to hit. I was really aiming like 60, 65 kids would have been incredible. But ended up only having 30 kids show up.
Yeah.
And when that night came to an end, I was pretty defeated. And just all the hard work and time and praying over that event that I did, and had only that many kids show up was kind of deflating. That was probably one of my lower moments.
When you wanted to just kind of like throw in the towel, listen, I guess I'm not good. I guess I'm not good enough.
Yep.
Because you've only been in 2 years. I mean, you're going to have some of those, but really you got a 5-year mark. 5 years is where basically the honeymoon is over, but you find out what student ministry is really doing. Your first 2 years are just trying to get a foothold. Even if you know a lot of what you're doing, it's still some of that. And so here you were at how long had you been at that point? A year, 6 months, 2 years, what?
You know what? I said that wrong. I'm just over a year into this right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, just over a year.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're just breaking in. That's right.
Yeah, just break up.
That's right. You're just breaking in. That's good. That's not bad. And so 5 years, you find out what will happen to you, what has happened in the student ministry. If you go back to episode 191, I'm talking to Lenita Abushabake out of Australia. And she talked about she doesn't look at things in increments of a few months or even 2 or 3 years. She looks at what she's doing in increments of a decade. You overestimate what you can do in 2 years. You underestimate what you can do in a decade. I thought, well, that's really good. And there's some other business people that do that. In student ministry, we need to do the same thing. We need to be looking at a 10-year mark instead of a 2-year mark, but you're fresh into it right now. And so tell me what your best moment has been so far.
Best moment so far, I'd say probably was, we call it a summer vacation trip with our students. We went to Atlanta for the Forward Youth Conference. We got this huge house in Atlanta, went to Six Flags and the World of Coca-Cola as well while we were down there. The conference was also just incredible. Free Chapel puts on a great conference. We're going back to that this year as well, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I want to say it was the second to last session that we were at. One of my during the closing of that session, one of my students, I could tell that message that he heard was really speaking to him, and he was pretty emotional. And so I went over and prayed for him and everything, and I just sat there and held him and prayed for him as he wept into my shoulder. And at that moment, I was like, this is really the reason. This is why we do this. Even if it's just one, to see one have heart change like that, for Jesus to work on their heart like that. Even after that, got to have some really, really good conversation with him and just hear some of the things he's going through. That was one of those things where I was kind of looking for, at that point, I was kind of still looking for some confirmation in what I was doing, and like really wondering, like, am I the right person for this? And that was one of those things that God has me right where He wants me. That was one of those moments that I saw come to light. I had one of my leaders that I work with. Her name's Casey Johnson. She, during the whole process of me starting into this, she told me to never underestimate what God can do with a willing heart. During that moment at that conference, kind of really saw that come to light, because I was really just letting God move me during that moment and praying for Him to help me use the right words to lead this kid. And that was definitely a highlight for sure.
There you go. Best moment. Not a better moment than when you lead someone to Jesus. And that's the purpose of student ministry. How many can we fish for? How many fish can we catch? Fishers of men, Jesus talks about. Now, listen, you got some good mentors around you. First of all, you've got Andy, your pastor, who was doing student ministry, which I did not know, before he started Factory Church. And for those of you who don't understand Factory, my son was so excited because Andy basically has his own business, and there is no salary for Andy at Factory Church. He leaves the salaries for people like Caleb and some other people that he's got on staff. But he doesn't take a salary. He has his own business, and it's quite a phenomenal business. But Casey and her husband, what mentors you've got there, because I know about the events that they used to be a part of that shook the nation. So tell a little bit about your mentors, Casey and her husband. Maybe it's only Casey. Tell us about them.
Yeah, they're amazing people. I get to work alongside of Casey 6 days a week, and she's just an incredible mentor and leader. I would say one thing that I love about her, she loves to see the team win, which is me, and we've got 4 or 5 other of us full time on staff, but she loves to see the team win, and will do anything that she can to see the team win. She's always putting us above herself, and just will drop whatever she's doing to help one of us, whether we need to talk through an event or something, or if we're dealing with something in our respective area. She's an incredible leader.
Well, here's why she's an incredible leader. And I probably know more about the events that she was a part of than you do, because you're so young and you probably don't. But Acquire the Fire.
Yep.
Has she talked to you about Acquire the Fire and how she and her husband were a part of that?
Yeah, she shared a decent bit about that, and what they used to do.
And they used to fill professional stadiums with students,
yeah,
and youth workers. So
Incredible.
We're talking heavy hitters here that are in your midst, that are saying these things to you. Caleb, that is a huge thing.
Absolutely.
Now, they are not the only mentors that you'll need in your life, but they are some really heavy hitters that you've got in your door that's right there with you. I would listen to everything they say about student ministry as well, and also dig deeper with the other people from other organizations. So you've got those people in your corner. You just told me about the best advice given to you right now, and that was by Casey. That's amazing. What about the messages that one of your students responded to? Do you remember one time speaking? You may not even remember what it was, but do you remember the students really responding well to it, and in fact, better than you thought they would?
Yeah, I would say that one was pretty recently. It was a message I preached on Psalms 91, and I had just earlier in that week, I was in a car wreck and ended up getting hit pretty bad, and didn't even know if I was going to be able to have youth that night, or at least I didn't know if I was going to be able to preach that night, just because I was dealing with a lot of pain from that. And I preached on Psalms 91, and finding peace in the chaos, and really having God as our shelter and our fortress. And I told him the wreck that I was in, and it's funny because I was on the way to a youth event when I was in that car wreck, and I was probably 10 seconds from pulling into the parking lot when I got hit.
Oh my!
And
Wow.
Yeah, and it was really a God thing that I was able to walk away from that and not have worse injuries from that car wreck.
That puts some real wings on Psalm 91, since it talks about the protection of the Lord.
Yes, absolutely. And I read Psalms 91. Then I just took a moment, even before the wreck, and especially after the wreck. There's a song that's called Psalms 91 by Anna Golden that song had really just been speaking to my heart. I'm getting married in August, and there's a part in that song that talks about it's just speaking scripture, but the part about no harm will come to my family, and the first thing that I thought of as my life was flashing before my eyes when I was getting hit was my fiance, and I was just so grateful to God that he protected me in that wreck, and so I played that song at the end of my message. Just told the students, don't worry about anybody that's next to you or anything. when I worship, I love to raise my hands and surrender to God and everything. And they're kids and do they don't like to do stuff that makes them look weird or have them stand out, particularly. So I told them, close your eyes and do what you feel the Lord's leading you to do. And I obviously got emotional listening to that song during that moment and praise during that moment. And there was a moment I opened my eyes and there were a lot of kids that just had their hands raised and were also crying during listening to that song. And so that was a really special one for me, and really love seeing the response from those students during that.
Did any of them say something to you afterwards?
Yeah, a lot of them were obviously thankful that God protected me in that accident. But they were really I had a couple of them just say, just thank you for being so real and raw and open with us, and not being afraid to show that God's moving on your heart with the way that I worshipped in front of them, and got emotional during my message and things like that. And they could really see that I cared about them, and I'm just trying to share the word of God with them and the love that God has showed me.
That's good. That's good. And being raw and being real, the more you're authentic, the people in speaking world and people in media worlds like to use the word authentic. People like to see people who are authentic. They're not hiding behind something. They're not trying to make themselves out to be something that they're not. And so you're aware of that, and they are too. And so when you become real and you go through pains and you share those pains with them, they relate, because there's nothing new under the sun, and people go through pain in this world. And that's why Jesus was called the man of sorrows. He came to feel our suffering and to relate with us as much as he did anything else. So that's huge in your life, and huge that you kept going forward. You could have easily said that night, you know what, I've had a wreck. I'm just not going to come tonight. You guys just kind of do your thing. But instead you went forward, because God has a way, Satan has a way of trying to keep us from saying what we need to say. God has a way of taking what seems to be horrible and controversial and turning it into a God event. And that was a God event for you.
Absolutely.
Now you're in love. You're getting ready to get married in August. So tell us about your love story. Tell us about your fiance and how you all met.
Yeah. So we met on the Christian dating app called Upward, and that was last year, May 2nd was when we first met on the app. And I had been single for almost 3 or 4 years before I met Jenna. And in my last relationship, I was able to see God kind of revealed to me what I really wanted and what was really biblical to have for a wife. And so I was pretty cautious on wanting to dive into a relationship. And we waited. It was almost a month before we actually got to meet each other in person. We both are on staff at churches, and so we have busy schedules and whatnot. But I was also just a little cautious with wanting to rush into anything. And she wasn't trying to rush anything at all, and she was really patient during that month before we even got to see each other face to face. We met for the first time in person on May 31st, and we went to a coffee shop, and we were at that coffee shop for, I want to say, almost 2.5 hours, just talking to each other, getting to know each other, and talking about what we believe and things like that, and what relationship values and things like that. We instantly clicked, and we were on the same level with so many things. And wasn't very long after that I asked her to be my girlfriend. And then we were dating for just over 6 months, and I proposed to her back on November 18th of last year, and now we're getting married in August of this year, and it's been amazing. She's an amazing woman, and she's so very kind and so very patient with me, and she just does so much to help me succeed in what I'm doing. She comes to a lot of the youth nights when she can, and she's a great support system as well.
So who fell in love first? What would her story be behind all that? Would she say she was in love first, or you were?
I'm probably gonna say her on that one, because she, I think it was maybe the second time we saw each other. She told me that after we had matched on the app, that she'd seen me in public before, at one of the local high schools. There was a theater play that was going on, and she told me that she had seen me there before. And funny enough, she was in one of Casey Johnson's youth groups.
Wow!
And so she knows Casey, and had seen me on Casey's Instagram stories and things like that. And so I think I'm going to say her. She was the one that fell in love first.
And when did you know that she was the one?
Really, just after that first time we met. It just felt so natural and easy to talk to her. A couple days after that, we went for a drive together. Ended up driving around, I think, for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, just asking each other a bunch of questions and talking. And one of those nights, I took her to her neighborhood pool parking lot, and we danced in the parking lot. And I would say that was for sure when I knew that she was the one.
Well, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
As we're getting ready to end here and close this out, anything else you'd want to tell youth workers, especially youth workers that have only been in for a year like yourself?
I would just say kind of what Casey told me. Just don't underestimate what God can do with a willing heart. If you say yes to Him and just are fully surrendered to Him, He'll guide you and lead you where you're supposed to go. And I've fully believed that in this past just little over a year. There's not much that I'd want to be different in my life right now at all. So,
well, that's great. That's amazing. And listen, Ryan told me that he had talked to you guys about Youth Pastor Summit.
Yep, I just booked everything today.
Good, and so they had room for you.
Yep,
that's amazing, because this is getting pretty close, and they usually are over capacity well before that date. So I'm very excited and happy that you're going to Youth Pastor Summit. Youth Pastor Summit is the best. You're going to be a part of one of three, because they have one in Orlando where Youth Pastor Summit and Student Leadership University is. And then because they grew so much, they do one in the Midwest and one on the West Coast. I'm very excited to see what happens after Youth Pastor Summit, Caleb. And we probably need to have another interview when you get back.
Absolutely.
Well, maybe we can hook up while you're down here and get together and talk.
Absolutely.
Proud of you. Thank you for listening to God. Thank you. Thank God for Pastor Andy, who poured into your life and now is pouring into my son's life and so many, many others. Well, Caleb, listen, I'm not going to take up all your whole night, but I appreciate you sharing with the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. And we'll see what happened at Youth Pastor Summit. Hopefully I'll get to see you there. If not, see you around town before you leave town. Be safe, be careful, don't have any more wrecks. Tell your lovely fiance that Youth Worker on Fire said hello.
Absolutely, will do.
And share this with your church when it comes out. All right. This was Caleb Turner, Factory Church, Concord, North Carolina, a suburb of Charlotte, North Carolina. Buddy, we will see you later. Have a great night.
Thank you, Doug. Have a good one.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.